Hello, friends. Thanks for tuning in today as we continue to make the case that Joseph Smith did not teach, practice, or sanction polygamy. It's good to be back with you. If it's your first time here, as always, please go and watch my video, Woe Unto You Scribes, The Hidden History of Polygamy. That is a great place to start with all this. And if you have seen it, will you just please take a couple of minutes and try to think of a couple people you could share it with. There's also a trailer for it on my channel. So you could actually go and get copy the link to the trailer and put that on your social media page and just say, hey guys, this looks interesting. What do you think? Something simple like that would really help. Also, I have what I like to call pass-along cards, which are just these little business cards that say the name of the video and also the website. And you can get those at my website. If you'll go to josephtoldthetruth.org and email me there, I'll be happy to send those to you. And they're really useful. They're easy to pass along to friends or strangers or store clerks or pest control salesmen. Pretty much everybody I share those with. So hardly anyone leaves my porch without getting one of those in their hand. What else do I have here? Let's see. I'm super casual today, you guys. I've got my Chosen t-shirt on. Didn't really dress up for y'all today. So we're just going to wing it. Much like Watcher Palmer. Do you guys know Watcher Palmer? If you're familiar with his channel, if you're not, go there immediately. I'll link to his channel in the description box. What a great guy. He just turns on the camera and he talks and he does such a good job. So some of my posts here will be pretty casual like that. Another friend who is doing podcasts is named Dave Sharp. So Dave and his wife, Jamie Lynn, have started a channel called The Saints, The Standard of Truth Restored. I highly recommend that. He just jumped in last week with his first 2 videos. So again, I'll link that in the description box so that you can go there. Please subscribe to his channel. They're going to be great. They are so sincere, and he's doing a great job so far. I'm so impressed. So go check that out. We are trying to get the word out any way we can. And we even have, I was going to show you, we have bumper stickers. That's been kind of fun. People have sent me pictures where they've seen those out in the wild on someone's car. That's been really fun. And also, so cool. I have a friend that is some sort of miracle worker, and she got us a billboard for today. It's the 4th of July, and she secured an electronic billboard in Provo, Utah, right in the heart of everything, on the 4th of July, with so many people going to see the Stadium of Fire event. So just tons of people are going to be able to see this billboard. And I'm so excited about that. So I don't know how she did it, but I do know the Lord's hand is in this. I've got another friend who is doing Facebook ads for me and driving traffic to the website and the video. And I've seen a jump in the video views lately. So I'm super happy about that. It's really successful. We hit 30,000 views last week for Woe Unto You Scribes. That's wonderful. I want to see that keep going up. So please share that with anyone and everyone. Okay, I want to spend a few minutes today on what has become a pretty hot topic for the last couple of weeks, and that is the 1886 John Taylor revelation. And for a long time, the church did not really acknowledge this as a legitimate revelation. For a while in the early 1900s, they claimed that it didn't exist. And so very recently, it got put onto the church history catalog. So if you don't know anything about this, I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version. And for a much better description of it and treatment of this, please go and check out Connor Boyack's recent Sunday musing, as he calls them, on this topic. And again, that'll be linked in the description box. So go and check that out. He did a fantastic job on this. So I'm just going to give you the short version, just in case you haven't heard about it. In the late 1880s, the U.S. government was putting heavy pressure on the church to stop polygamy. and they were withholding statehood for Utah. They were threatening to confiscate church property, all sorts of things. And so in 1886, John Taylor, the president of the church at that time, recorded a supposed revelation in which the Lord purportedly says that polygamy will not be revoked. So I'm going to read you the revelation. It's very short, so I'll read you the whole thing so you can understand what it says. My son John, you have asked me concerning the new and everlasting covenant, and how far it is binding upon my people. Thus saith the Lord, all commandments that I give must be obeyed by those calling themselves by my name, unless they are revoked by me or by my authority. And how can I revoke an everlasting covenant? For I, the Lord, am everlasting, and my everlasting covenants cannot be abrogated nor done away with, but they stand forever. Have I not given my word in great plainness on this subject? Yet have not great numbers of my people been negligent in the observation of my law and the keeping of my commandment? And yet have I borne with them these many years, and this because of their weakness, because of the perilous times. And furthermore, it is more pleasing to me that men should use their free agency in regard to these matters. Nevertheless, I, the Lord, do not change, and my word and my covenants and my law do not. And as I have heretofore said by my servant Joseph, all those who would enter into my glory must and shall obey my law. And have I not commanded men that if they were Abraham's seed and would enter into my glory, they must do the works of Abraham? I have not revoked this law, nor will I, for it is everlasting, and those who will enter into my glory must obey the conditions thereof. Even so, amen. So there you have it, an alleged revelation saying that polygamy will never be revoked. And of course, one reason this is such a controversial document is that 4 years later, polygamy was revoked with the 1890 manifesto from Wilford Woodruff. So that's a little awkward. P.S., just as a quick side note, polygamy did not actually stop with the 1890 manifesto. The apostles continued to take new plural wives for at least another 14 years. And when they got caught, they issued another manifesto in 1904 saying, we're really not doing polygamy anymore now. And historians are well aware of that, and that's not disputed. But the long and short of it is that polygamy was eventually stopped, which makes this 1886 John Taylor revelation that says it will never be revoked pretty awkward. So because of this, a whole bunch of polygamy apologists are engaging in some pretty creative linguistic gymnastics right now to try to show that these very contradictory revelations are actually totally compatible. Brian Hales, in particular, was on a podcast called Mormonism with the Murph, hosted by Stephen Murphy, last week, doing exactly this. I was surprised to see him because last I checked, he had been called on a mission, like a church history mission. So I didn't expect to see him anytime soon, but he explained that his mission president had allowed him to take off his missionary tag temporarily and just represent himself on this interview with Stephen Murphy. So Brian talks about a paper he wrote years ago about this alleged John Taylor revelation, where he tries to draw a distinction between laws and covenants and commandments and explain that they're different and there's major distinctions between them. So he explains that laws and covenants cannot be revoked, but commandments can. So he says, these observations are important because if the practice of plural marriage was a law, then it could never be revoked. And the manifestos would have been plainly contradictory to this revelation. And I agree they would be, and I believe they are. So the supposed revelation itself refers to polygamy as a law, as a covenant, and as a commandment, interchangeably. It calls it the new and everlasting covenant. It says, thus saith the Lord, all commandments that I give must be obeyed. How can I revoke an everlasting covenant? I, the Lord, am everlasting, and my everlasting covenants cannot be abrogated nor done away with. Great numbers of my people have been negligent in the observance of my law and the keeping of my commandments. My word and my covenants and my law do not change, and I have not revoked this law, nor will I. So John Taylor, or whoever wrote this revelation, is not making any distinctions between laws, covenants, commandments. They're all not going to be revoked. So Brian Hales seems to agree with this. And I'll play you a clip here from his interview with Stephen Murphy.
We think that President Taylor's asking, what do we do with polygamy? And God comes out and he says, well, I can't revoke an everlasting covenant. He also says in here that I cannot do away with an eternal law.
Okay, so polygamy is referred to as a covenant and as a law that can't be revoked. So we're done, right? Like, this supposed revelation clearly contradicts the manifesto that would be given 4 years later, where polygamy was revoked. So what does Brian take issue with? Like, he just read those words, but this is what he says.
To summarize, in the Revelation, he says that God's laws and their conditions, as well as his covenants, do not change, cannot be revoked or abrogated. Now, that doesn't specifically mention polygamy.
So he starts out explaining that John Taylor was asking about polygamy, but now it's not necessarily about polygamy after all. So it's definitely about polygamy. I mean, anybody reading that, what I just read to you, the revelation, the supposed revelation, it's clearly about polygamy. It's talking about things that the Lord is saying can't be revoked. Well, no one was asking for regular marriage to be revoked. No one was objecting to marriage between one man and one wife. No one was objecting to eternal marriage between one man and one wife. They were only objecting to polygamy, to plural marriage. That was the objection. So that is what the whole revelation is about, saying, no, I'm not going to revoke this. So it's very odd to then turn around and say, well, some of this wasn't about polygamy, and he was just referring to polygamy sometimes during this, and sometimes just regular celestial marriage. And just incidentally, when Joseph F. Smith collected all the affidavits in 1867 from women who agreed to sign their names to the affidavits that he wrote for them, saying that they had been married or sealed to Joseph Smith, those collections of affidavits were in his books, and the title of those books was Celestial Marriages. So he didn't distinguish, like, celestial marriage was a term that was used for polygamous marriage. Again, kind of interchangeably. But leaving that aside, this revelation from John Taylor was definitely about polygamy. Like I said, no one was trying to get the Mormons to stop doing other kinds of marriages, just polygamous ones. Also, in a speech by John Taylor around this same time, he talks about polygamy and refers to it as the principle of plural marriage and also as a law given to us of God. And he's disappointed, and he says he's disappointed that during his travels, he found that there are some who seem to be opposed to this law. Well, nobody was opposing, again, he calls it a law, and nobody was opposing marriage between a man and a wife. What they were balking at was polygamy. So again, this is obviously the law that he's referring to, and he calls it a law. So he just doesn't make these distinctions that Brian's wanting to make. Here's another kind of wacky part in Brian's paper. I'll link it below, of course. You're going to want to see this for yourself. He points out that there is not a single reference to a law of plural marriage, quote unquote, in the scriptures. Well, yeah, we all agree on that. That's kind of our point. It's not a thing. That's what we've been trying to say this whole time. But then he says that neither Joseph Smith nor Brigham Young, John Taylor, nor any other early Utah church leader ever mentioned it, the law of plural marriage. But I swear to you, 2 paragraphs later, he tells us that Orson Pratt and George A. Smith both mentioned the law of plurality in their speeches. John Taylor, of course, referred to the law of polygamy, and Franklin D. Richards referred to the law of plural marriage. Literally the same phrase, the law of plural marriage. Why 2 paragraphs earlier he said that no other early church leader ever mentioned the law of plural marriage, and then quotes Franklin D. Richards saying the law of plural marriage. I don't understand that. Like, this isn't a technical term, but I think that's bonkers. He says statements can be quoted out of context to create the appearance that church leaders taught of a law of plural marriage or something akin to it. Probably the quotations that you just cited, right? Like, that's a good start. And just as a reminder, D&C 132 itself, the alleged revelation on polygamy that supposedly Joseph Smith received, literally starts off referring to the principle and doctrine of having many wives and concubines, and says those who have this law revealed unto them must obey the same. So again, principle, law, interchangeable, no distinctions. Okay, one more thing that I want to share with you is an extraordinary thing that Brian said in the same interview with Stephen Murphy. To the question of whether the 1886 revelation is an authentic revelation, he says this.
There's been reference to an article that I wrote, and that article, if you go to, can you see that now? You see polygamy Mormon polygamy documents. If you go to this, it's .org, and you just scroll down to the second set here. It says the 1886 revelation. Sure, it's authentic, but so what?
So what? Okay, that's kind of a surprise. But Brian's point is that even if God did give John Taylor a bona fide revelation decreeing that polygamy must never be revoked, it wouldn't matter, because it's only up to the current church president, not some revelation from some past president, of whether we do a thing or not. And so even if it was a legitimate revelation from God to John Taylor saying polygamy must never be revoked, it would be up to the current church president to tell us what to do without regard to that revelation. I think that's truly extraordinary. I think it's shocking. So here he elaborates a little bit, because Stephen Murphy is going to ask him a little bit of a clarifying question, sort of playing devil's advocate to get his answer on this. So let me play this for you.
Your interpretation of John Taylor's revelation is, you interpret when the Lord speaks of everlasting covenant, that really what the Lord means is celestial marriage. But just for sake of argument, say that the Lord does mean plural marriage in this revelation. Let's just say the fundamentalists or critics who say, no, he's talking about plural marriage. Let's just say that's what he's referring to in this revelation. Even though it was not canonized, even though it wasn't brought forward to the church, would that present a problem, almost seem like a contradiction, if the Lord is saying to President Taylor in 1886, plural marriage is the everlasting covenant, it won't be revoked or done away with, and then 4 years later we have the manifesto? Would that be a problem if that is what the Lord is referring to as the everlasting covenant? Or could we just say, well, it wasn't canonized, wasn't presented to the church, so it's not binding?
But the issue about canonization was a big deal for me early on, and it's almost a non-issue for me right now, and simply because that if it's canonized or not, it's still going to be under the auspices of the one man mentioned in verse 7 who holds the keys. And so if we concluded that the new and everlasting covenant is polygamy, so what? We still have to have those marriages sealed through the one man who's appointed to the authority, as verse 18 tells us.
What if they were to say that President Taylor was at that time the current prophet with the priesthood keys, so therefore this revelation is more authoritative? If this was, thus saith the Lord, and they might argue that President Wilford Woodruff made a mistake or gave in to government pressure, this is contradictory to the prior prophet who received this revelation, thus saith the Lord, that this can't be revoked or changed, that this is an everlasting covenant.
Well, that's exactly how they do interpret it. And see, John Taylor, because he was on the underground, he changed Brigham Young's process. Brigham Young, so far as we know, was authorizing each of these plural marriages, and John Taylor allowed local leaders to make some of those decisions, and that represented a change. And the idea was that when John Taylor died, some of these men thought they still had authority to make those decisions. But according to the law of the keys, the keys passed to Wilford Woodruff. He was responsible for every one of the marriages. And so if somebody who was authorized under John Taylor suddenly thought he was authorized under Wilford Woodruff, that simply wouldn't be accurate according to Wilford Woodruff's own teaching.
Okay, so somebody who was authorized under John Taylor would not be authorized then under Wilford Woodruff. And that is this amazes me. I don't even know what to make of this. He's literally saying that we should not obey a revelation from God unless the current church president tells us to obey it. And I just can't think of any better way to be swayed to and fro with every wind of doctrine than that. This idea exactly mirrors what Brigham Young said, that he wouldn't give the ashes of a rye straw for the scriptures, and that we should rely on the living oracles, which in 1866, when he was explaining this, would have been himself. So I think it's really important to understand that Joseph Smith taught the exact opposite. He said, if any man writes to you or preaches to you doctrines contrary to the Bible, the Book of Mormon, or the Book of Doctrine and Covenants, set him down as an impostor. Try them by the principles contained in the acknowledged Word of God. If they preach or teach or practice contrary to that, cut them off as useless and dangerous branches. Okay, that is probably enough for me today. Again, if you want more details presented really well, check out Connor Boyack's Sunday musing on this. Link is in the description box. He did a great job. All of this sort of contortionist thinking is another testimony to me that polygamy is not of God, that it's a bad seed. When you plant it, it does not bear good fruit. It's not delicious. It's not even reasonable. It doesn't enlighten. It confuses. And the more you look into it, the more confusing and unpalatable it becomes, which is not the case with any true doctrine. Good seeds produce delicious fruit. The seed of polygamy does not, and it should be cast away, as Alma advises. So let me end on something that Brian Hales and I totally agree on. Here's a quick clip.
And in some ways, it's kind of interesting. There's a parallel I see to section 132, because Joseph Smith goes to the Lord, says, what about the plurality of wives of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob?
I could not agree more. I absolutely see parallels between John Taylor's supposed revelation from 1886 and Doctrine and Covenants 132. And I am convinced that neither one is from God and neither one is from Joseph Smith. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.